Hello and welcome to another edition of Heat Check. Plenty happening around the hoops world, and we are your mere volunteers who are here to check the heat. My name's Joel Peterson. His name's Michael Houben. Good to see you again, Mick.
Great to see you too. It's been a big week, hasn't it?
It has indeed. There is plenty going on, and we're not necessarily in the breaking news game here. We leave that to the likes of Pete Hooley and Olga Ulick and Jack Heverin on the marketplace. However, when something like the Bryce Cotton news drops, it would be remiss of us not to go and back over that over the last couple of weeks. It's the story that's dominated Australian basketball in the last week, the sensational news that Bryce Cotton, the multiple-time MVP, maybe the greatest import the NBL's ever seen, is going to sign with the Adelaide 36ers. What a story this is. First of all, before we get into the whys, wherefores and how it's all going to work, what have you made of it all?
Well, first and foremost, I am very excited that Bryce is back in the league. There was a point in time there it felt like a foregone conclusion. He was probably going to try his luck in Asia or overseas somewhere. So very happy that we're going to keep watching him play basketball, but very intriguing to see how it's played out on behalf of the Perth Wildcats, how they've handled the situation, their timeline and ultimatum. And then, of course, Bryce to, go to their rival in Adelaide and see how that plays out. I know that game is going to be on the calendar for me.
It's got to open the season. We have to open the season there. Maybe not the first game of the season. This is what Matt Weston had to say about the signing. So it took a couple of days working around the clock, similar to what he did last year with the likes of Montrezl Harrell and bringing some of those talent levels in. So, it's another big tick in the box in terms of a big fish landing for Matt Weston and the Adelaide 36ers. The fit with Bryce Cotton in Adelaide. You've got DJ there, you've got Isaac there, you've signed the likes, some players coming in there, the Michael Harrises of the world. How is this going to work for Adelaide?
It's fascinating, right? This feels like a situation where you get Bryce and you figure out the rest later. Bryce is just such a talent. But on paper, there doesn't seem to be a fantastic fit. The team obviously wasn't built around Bryce. They have DJ, a very similar type of player, that shooting guard position. They have a multitude of other guards as well, and then a couple of bigs. Now, again, talent-wise, on paper, fantastic. I don't know if they're necessarily complementary players, but sometimes you just get the talent together, you figure it out later, and of course they have a couple of big spots to come.
And it's a big test in a way for Mike Wells, a massive opportunity, but it's a big test to try and get this to all come together in his second season as coach.
That's right, and I think those final pieces are going to be really important in terms of making this roster tenable. Now Bryce and DJ are going to have to figure it out together. And, maybe Bryce is playing more of a traditional point guard role with DJ off the ball a little bit more. And then I'm very intrigued to see what they do with the rest of their front court spots as well.
And if you're following social media, you've probably seen that there's been a little bit happening between DJ Vasiljevic and Montrezl Harrell. As we go to record, we're not 100% sure where this will land, but they have flagged that there are more surprises to come here at Adelaide. So they're clearly with the groundswell of momentum behind this team in that city and the crowds that they're getting and the interest in the 36ers coming off last year in the last couple of years, they're clearly in a pretty good spot.
Well, if you're Matt Weston, you have to strike while the iron's hot. And I think his MO over the past couple of seasons is you just get the talent. Now, if that's Montrezl Harrell back, we know he wasn't a perfect fit in terms of the roster last season, but he was very productive. Whether it's someone like DeMarcus Cousins, I've seen that rumoured, playing with him in Puerto Rico. There's a multitude of options, but it will be really fascinating to see, do they go for the fit or do they go for the talent?
Yeah, there's so many questions for that Adelaide 36ers team, but what a squad that's going to be. They're going to play some high-octane basketball. There is no doubt about that. Of course, they've had good news in Adelaide in the last little while in the WNBL with that team's future secured, and the WNBL launched a new logo recently as their sort of journey toward this bold new era continues. It's a very exciting team or time for that competition. Free agency isn't too far away. They flagged some expansion type stuff. I'll get your thoughts on it in a second. Before that, let's hear from WNBL CEO Jenny Sager on the new logo and what's to come.
Wow. I love it. It's so fresh, like he said. It's so different. I love the colours. It's amazing.
Yeah, I feel like it's really bold, right? Like it feels really different when you see it side by side, which we did through the process of, where we were, and obviously things haven't changed in a while, and this is more about where are we going, right? And where do we want to take things? And it does feel modern, it does feel bold, it feels dynamic and empowering. I think that strength behind it is really important, and I think, again, making sure that that feels professional and it doesn't need to feel overly feminine. Like we are a women's league, but that doesn't mean that we need to be pink, for example. And so really leaning into like what makes you feel that inspiration, that empowerment. And I feel like it's really great. We've incorporated some basketball elements here, so you can see those like inspiration from the net and the hoop, obviously. And then it's actually like wings kind of coming off of the W, which is symbolizing like us kind of like going to new heights in the spirit of the WNBL, and really just kind of the freedom, you know, and again, like soaring to new heights for the athletes as well.
So there you go, Mick. It is bold, it is bright, it is exciting. It sort of signals again this new era that the WNBL is heading to, which is very, very exciting.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. Usually it takes me a while to warm up to these new logos, but this looks fantastic. And as you said, it represents a new era of the league, and I think you can feel the buzz around it.
Yeah, there's some momentum building. Of course, we'll get through free agency. There's some expansion talk over the next couple of seasons as well. And there is no shortage of places and programs putting their hand up for teams. So it's all looking up for the WNBL in the next little while. We had some import news land in the NBL this week. Of course, we had the Bryce Cotton news land. That was absolutely massive. But a little bit more recently, the Tassie JackJumpers have made an interesting move to sign a new import guard, David Johnson, who's most recently been playing in the G League. So he was the number 47 pick in the 2021 draft, went to college at Louisville. He spent some time with the Raptors organisation and then with the Memphis organisation in the G League. And he looks to be a very potent scorer.
This looks to be a really fantastic signing. A very different player to Jordan Crawford. They weren't looking to replicate another point guard, nor replicate someone like Milton Doyle either. He's very different. He's a bit more of an off-ball scorer, a high-volume three-point shooter, shot over 42% on over 7 attempts a game last G League season. And he's someone that doesn't really get to the line a lot. He's less of a creator and more of a release valve shot maker as well. Think of closer to a Tariko White than a Bryce Cotton, let's put it that way.
All right, I like that. Now, so I mean, the Milton Doyle piece is the interesting one here, because that's sort of the last domino to fall. You can see a world where their starting lineup is Sean McDonald, who, you know, they wanted to start all of last season despite his injury concerns. You've got Josh Bannon, you've got Will Magnay, now you've got Johnson. Do you put Doyle in there at that 2 spot? You know, what does Milton's future hold? That is now the biggest puzzle piece for them, isn't it?
Well, the intriguing part for me, when I saw this signing, I was thinking, is this a Milton Doyle replacement, or is he someone to play alongside Milton Doyle? And I think they've intentionally gone for someone that could be either. I think Milton Doyle has shown some chops playing point guard, playing on the ball a little bit more. They could definitely do that. And between Sean McDonald and Milton Doyle, they could have the point guard duties, and then Johnson would slide between the 2 and the 3. Now, he could play the 2 altogether. Doyle could be out. You could get another wing to go on the 3. But I think, broadly speaking, you're right. I think Sean is going to start at the 1, and then the rest will play itself out.
Yeah, so some interesting moves to be made for the Tassie JackJumpers in the next little while. We'll come back to them very shortly as well. Jacob Holt is an interesting signing with the Brisbane Bullets as far as free agency goes. So, again, another youngster coming in. Tell me a little bit about the big man.
Yeah, Jacob is a really fascinating case. He's sort of in line with, you know, the Galloway brothers or Elijah Pepper or even Matisse Thybulle. He's one of those players that grew up in North America. He grew up just south of Vancouver. Hasn't really been to Australia before, but due to his mum being Australian, he has the option to try and get his Australian passport, his local eligibility, and as a result, Brisbane have seen a fantastic opportunity, and they like what they see from Holt a lot.
So 6'10", played at Sacramento State. He's a big, powerful presence. What have you made of his game from what you've seen?
Yeah, he had a fantastic senior season, really blew up in that final year, was Sacramento State's leading scorer, which as a big man at the top of the scouting report is really impressive. What we really like about Jacob, we saw in those clips earlier, a really fantastic athlete. If he gets 2 feet in the paint, he is dunking the ball. We're going to get some highlights out of him. But particularly in this final year, we saw the shooting stroke really come along. He knocked down nearly 35% of his threes, and when he was able to stretch the floor out, he could take guys off the dribble as well. So you look at Brisbane, you look at the fit, I think he's someone who is going to be able to back up the 5. If the shooting translates, back up the 4 as well. And then based on Brisbane's interpretation, I think they sort of see him as, maybe a Bannon replacement long term as well.
Very exciting. They've made a little bit of a habit in recent years of having some exciting young big men up there in Brisbane, and Jacob Holt looks to be a continuation of that. We said we'd come back to the JackJumpers. They've recently signed Kobe Williamson, so he is going to immediately challenge Kyle Bowen for the best moustache in the league. Now, that is one part of what he brings to the table with the flowing red locks as well. It's a nice setup that he's running. But he's playing with the Knox Raiders at the moment, played with Seattle over in college. What does he bring to the table? level.
Yeah, really fascinating. And it's interesting that you mentioned Kyle Bowen because I think there are a lot of parallels. He's a little bit of an undersized big. He's about 6'7", 6'8". He actually played on the Under-17 World Cup team that had Luke Travers, Tamuri Wigness, Wani Swaka-Labullock and Josh Bannon. He was an integral part of that team. Of course, the big thing is, when you're 6'8", are you going to be a viable centre at the NBL level? We are a little bit of an undersized league, but he's tough. He plays good defence. He's been shooting the occasional three as well. I think, you look at Tassie, Bannon has an injury history. Magnay has an injury history, and Tasmania have locked him up on a 2-year deal. So he's going to provide some really helpful depth for them.
And of course, no Fabian Krislovic for them into the coming season as well. So, they struggled at that backup big spot last year for depth and getting some real impact when Magnay went out. So he could be, a very valuable signing for the JackJumpers, that is for sure. WNBA's kicked off, which is very exciting. We've got, of course, the best women's league in the world underway. One of our own stars is right at the centre of it in her 3rd season and 2nd for the Washington Mystics, Jade Melbourne, who is putting together a nice start to her campaign. Of course, first season with the Mystics last year, a few more minutes. So far this year, averaging 10, 4 and 3. We've just had a most improved player in the NBA. Could we potentially have one in the W as well?
I could see it, and I think the most fantastic thing about this is she has the green light. She's had 29 and 35 minutes since we checked in on her last week. She is getting a lot of rope to play her game, and at 22 years old, you need to be able to play through your mistakes. She's been really productive, had 14 points against the Aces last game, but on top of that, her fouls are a little bit high, her turnovers are a bit high. But to me, that just indicates she's trying to make stuff happen on both ends of the floor. And as she continues to play through those mistakes, she's just going to grow and get better and better.
And we know that she's pretty seasoned. Even at the tender age she's at, she's pretty seasoned. She's been playing senior basketball for a long, long time now, and doesn't shy away from big moments, big opportunities in the big stage.
If there's one position that's really hard to make that translation to the pros at the highest level that Jade's playing in, it's the point guard position. There is so much responsibility to be had, in terms of decision making as well as your actual skill set. And the fact that she's producing like she is now is really a testament to her quality.
And when we do get to see her and Georgia Amor on the same court, which hopefully we get to see before too long, that is going to be very, very exciting. Indeed. Another young Aussie who's doing good things in the States is Ben Henshaw. Now, of course, he put his name in for the NBA draft. There's been a sort of decisions to make there as to what he does next. And he's got the attention of the Texas Tech Red Raiders, most notable perhaps for being the former school of Patrick Mahomes, the superstar quarterback in the NFL, but could potentially be the future school of our own Ben Henshaw.
He's in an interesting space right now. Obviously, he's doing the combine, as we've seen. He's been doing really well. But so far, I haven't seen him mock top 60 on any draft. While the NBA is, his first priority, this may not necessarily be the year for him. He's got, the ability to opt out and assess his options. Now, NBL-wise, he had a great year with the Perth Wildcats. I'm sure the Perth Wildcats would like him back, considering Bryce Cotton's left as well. I'm sure they'd lean into him a bit more. But college is knocking on the door. We've seen on the online grapevine, Florida's been mentioned, Texas Tech has been mentioned. Now, I look at Florida, they have recruited a few guards through the transfer portal. I presume that they moved on, but I saw Ben's tweeting today as we were recording this. He posted a side-eye emoji for one thing. Something's happening when that's going on.
Yep.
He also posted a clip with Alex Condon, some players with them playing together for the WA team. Now, if he's alluding to anything there, it's probably leading towards the Florida Gators.
Interesting. That's a nice little segue as well. It takes us to Alex Condon, who has just announced in the last little while that he's withdrawing from the NBA draft. I believe that is actual footage of the phone call that he made to inform his agent that he was going back to Florida. So the big man is going back to the Gators for another year, coming off a national championship, had an ankle injury late in the piece. Is this because maybe he didn't see himself going in the first round? What do you think the reasons are here?
Well, I heard he had a fantastic pre-draft process. I was expecting him to stay in, but clearly he's evaluated where he thinks his stock would lie. I think he wanted to be a first rounder, and potentially he was in the market more of a second rounder this year. Now he's betting on himself. He's going back to college for one more year. he already reached the pinnacle of team success. They won the national championship. We know he was a big impact player in that. So in this third year, his junior year, he's going to have to take an individual step up in terms of his production. Particularly offensively, we've seen glimpses of outside shooting. We've seen glimpses of passing, glimpses of post play, but nothing really emerged as a go-to skill yet. So that's what he's going to be working on next year.
Do you think he's going to be doing that to Ben Henschel to try and get into Florida as well? I mean, that'd be a hell of a tag team, wouldn't it?
Yeah, in theory, perfect. Obviously, they have a bit of chemistry already. They played on the West Australian team together, and look, that might have been the actual phone call because it seems like they've had a few conversations.
Yeah, he's just saying you can come and wear this jersey, Ben. Keep watching on that, and we will certainly keep you updated here on Heat Check and on basketball.com.au as to the whereabouts of Ben Henschel and whether he's linking up with Alex Condon at Florida. We check in Puerto Rico pretty much regularly. We go sort of a little bit south from Florida and check in at Puerto Rico. Last week, you and Jack spoke about the Migos trio, of course, Doyle, Wardenberg, Harrison, and Tyrell Harrison's continued to do really good things over there. We know what a great start he had to last NBL season. He's been able to stay a little bit more fit. Have a look at the numbers. So 16 games played, 29 minutes or so, 18, 9 and an assist. He brings rim protection, he brings physicality. He's having a great season.
He is one of the best non-American players in the league. He's definitely the most dominant big man in this league, which is fantastic when you consider some of the talent that we talk about week to week in this league. He's been absolutely phenomenal. And as a result of that, he's getting a bit of summer league interest as well.
Is there another level for him to go to? So we saw him win the Blitz MVP last year and then have a really solid NBL season. He's sort of taken this gradual step up, step up, step up. Is there another level for Tyrell Harrison?
Based on this, I think there is. We already know that he's a good player in this league, but I think he can get all the way up to, being a marquee player in this league. We know bigs are a rare commodity, especially local bigs. And the fact that he's able to dominate in the post, he's finally gotten healthy. And now that he is healthy, he's taking that leap and that responsibility year to year. I can't wait to see what he does in a Bullets uniform.
He's the longest tenured Bullet and he's such a big part of their program, and hopefully he can come back and have a massive season for the Brisbane Bullets. Some of our Aussie women are coming back and, of course, coming off WNBA training camps and putting up some huge numbers in the NBL 1. Annalie Maley, of course, who was putting up stupendous numbers before she went to WNBA training camp. Shyla Heal's just come back playing for Bankstown, and Christy Wallace is playing for Knox. She had a bit of a slow start in game 1, but having the calibre of these type of players in our NBL 1 competition is remarkable, and some of the numbers here are pretty absurd.
It's pretty incredible that you can go from competing for a WNBA roster spot, and we've spoken about that process. It is ruthless, and some really talented ladies got cut as a result. Now, Maley's back in West, and she's catching every conceivable rebound as per usual, doing her thing. Shyla Heal, 29 points, 12 rebounds in her first game for Bankstown. And as you mentioned, Wallace as well. She is a seasoned pro. That Knox team's looking really stacked now.
Well, when Christy Wallace is coming off the bench, that's a fair old sign that they're going okay. But we know that the talent of each of these individuals, you see the little move from Shyla Heal there. I mean, there's going to be so much to watch and to like. And Bankstown have obviously got a pretty stacked men's team as well. So, if you game of the week on in the NBL 1, Bankstown's a pretty good option, I reckon.
Yeah, I think Bankstown are fantastic. I love watching Shyla play. And circling back to Knox as well, that is not the only new addition. They have Emma Agnes Nopu as well on that roster. So Knox just keep piling up the talent.
Yeah, who we've spoken about here on Heat Check, of course, coming off a nice season with TCU, the Ocean Grove product. So they're going to be a team to watch throughout the course of the season, that is for sure. Sticking with the NBL 1, we've chronicled the journey of Harry Froling over recent weeks, and he's come back to basketball. He's rolled down to the Melbourne Tigers because apparently they needed another big man who could shoot. Who knew? Jack Purchase wasn't enough. He's putting up 55. We go, we'll go and get Harry and just see what he can give us. 37 minutes on debut. And what did he have? 28 and 14. Welcome back, Harry.
Fantastic, right? And talk about teams that are piling up the talent. Harry, Jack Purchase, Tom Wilson as well. Melbourne Tigers are fun.
Felix von Hoff.
Felix von Hoff, sorry, I remiss to mention you, Felix.
His 4 minutes a game is very good.
Very productive. Yeah. I'd love to see the per 36 on those.
Yes.
But yeah, as for Harry, had a fantastic time in New Zealand, put up nearly a 20 and 10 average over his time. Harry, I'm watching this footage right now. He looks exactly like the player that we saw him previously in the NBL. The shot looks pure. He's attacking the rim. I think it's only a matter of time before he gets that NBL deal, right?
Is it this season?
I think it is this season. It's hard to get local bigs. Harry is, again, the shooting quality is so rare at 6'10", 6'11". I think teams would be crazy not to.
It'd be great to have him back. It's such a wonderful story, and it's just good to see him back healthy and doing what he loves with a bit of a second chance at basketball, really. So that's very cool. Also in the NBL 1 South, a name that you wanted to touch on, Deng Dut, who's been doing some really good things for the Keilor Thunder. He's had a couple of big plays this season, game winners and the like, and you wanted to shine a bit of light on him.
Yeah, I really enjoy watching Dut play. He is a fantastic point guard, 6'4", a lot of size, and he has a little bit of pedigree behind him based on his college days. Had a fantastic junior college career at Southern Idaho and had a lot of D1 interest off the back, including Texas Tech, the place that Ben Henschel is trying to be recruited to now. So had some really high major offers. Unfortunately, his D1 career never really got going. He had some very untimely injuries. But now he's back in the pros. He's having a fantastic first season in the NBL 1, leading Keilor, is a fantastic shooter, has a lot of poise in the pick and roll as well. And when you look around the league and you look at some of the local point guard options, I think he has to be right up there.
So where does he sit in terms of a potential NBL roster spot? Because he's right on the bubble of being DP eligible and that kind of thing. Where have you got him in that mix?
Yeah, it's always a little bit harder when you just past that threshold to make that DP candidacy, right? You know, you have to be on a full roster contract. So he has to really prove himself every step of the way before he's able to get a contract. But just in terms of his size, his ability to shoot it, you know, that's someone you can play on and off the ball. I think once his conditioning improves and is in his optimal shape, he's going to be a two-way player as well. And you put those qualities together and he's someone that, you know, you can really afford to have as an extra guard.
So Deng Dut, definitely a name to keep an eye on. We'll keep you updated on his prospects of an NBL roster spot here on Heat Check. Before we close out the show, Eurocamp rosters are being announced. Some of our personal favourite players are on this list, that is for sure. Of course, Roman Cialipa, who we've spoken about on this show. You've got Antonio Brown, who I'm a very big fan of. What jumps out to you here?
Well, it's a very broad spectrum of ages, isn't it? We've got, you know, a slightly older, relatively speaking, prospect in Owen Foxwell. We know he's an established NBL talent. He's going to boost his stock in NBA evaluators' minds.
He's the veteran of the Eurocamp.
Exactly right. He still doesn't quite look like a veteran yet, but in terms of his play, absolutely. Now, he's someone I think is on the precipice of, you know, maybe a summer league opportunity. And then Roman, of course, you know, we're always just interested to see him play basketball, right? A fantastic talent. He's going to be in a really high-level setting, so we'll see how he stacks up. And then we spoke about Jai last time. Antonio Brown, he was a bottom major at under 18s this year. Didn't stop him from being one of the most productive players. We'll see if he's ready to compete against this age group and this level. But long term, he's going to be fantastic.
He plays with a real confidence and a presence, Antonio Brown. I saw him a couple of years ago playing for New South Wales at the under 16 national championships, and you know he played with some real style. So he's a very exciting prospect to watch in years to come.
Very exciting, big, on-ball guard. He's someone who led New South Wales in scoring as a bottom major. I can't wait to see what he does in the coming years.
So very exciting for those four, absolutely. We'll wrap out the show in Minnesota, of course. They're in the Western Conference Finals at the moment. In a little bit of trouble, just quietly. Hopefully they can dig themselves out of that. But Joe Ingles has been getting plenty of love, which is very, very cool to see. We know what a favourite he is of Aussie Hoops fans and what a favourite he's been of the Minnesota team in recent times, and they were pretty happy there with his work recently.
Minnesota is 20 of 40 from three-point range. The chants are for Joe for Joe Ingles. Of course, is such a popular player here, and no matter where he's played, has not played yet in the playoffs. Clark. I don't think he wants to go in. Just so he wants to coach after he's finishing up. Joe Ingles, 37 years old, the Australian. Had some terrific years in the NBA, a tough, durable player.
Look, I was just going to say, as a former 37-year-old, you don't want to sit on ice for 2.5 hours and go out there with those young boys moving that fast. That sounds like a nightmare.
Ever the optimist and ever so modest is our man Joe. I would have thought when you're up 42 in Game 3 of the Western Conference Finals, Chris Finch, you could have just given our man a little bit of run. What's he got to do?
I was chanting from home as well, but we didn't get to see him. He waved him off. He said, guys, calm down, you know. Now, the Timberwolves are hanging by a thread right now, but this was an absolute high point, obviously in a blowout win as well. I read that his son Jacob was there as well. I'm sure he enjoyed the chance, and, you know, what a special moment. I'd love to see them come back and for Joe to win a chip.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be one of the great stories. Of course, he's been a great warrior for Australian basketball, and hopefully that continues into the near future for Joe Ingles. That's it this week for Heat Check. Thanks very much for your company, Mick. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks, mate. I'm excited.
There will be so much to cover by the time we get there. Thanks for your company as well. We'll see you next week on Heat Check.